Hello everybody. So I thought to look at the wicket-keeping credentials of the possible replacements for Tim Paine as wicket-keeper. Now, as captain, I think it'll be Pat Cummins at least for the Ashes, and beyond that, I think they might either stick with Pat Cummins, although there's a danger that he'll be a temporary captain, or else they'll either go back to Steve Smith or have Marnus Labuschagne. Anyway, one of those two. And I think based on media reports, and they do like to go with what people want, they do seem to be heading in the Smith direction. I still think Cummins will lead for this series. Now, the first and most obvious answer for who would replace Paine is Alex Carey. So Alex Carey is in the A squad, if you like. So and he's expecting to play as the wicketkeeper in that squad. So that's the warm-up squad essentially. And even though he's not in the first 15, if you like, he is in the second lot of 11 as the keeper. And so therefore, if Tim Paine were not to play, he would be the automatic choice. Now, Alex Carey is someone who has a name been bandied about since about 2016. So he's had about 5 years where he's been pretty close to the Test team, and he's been in ODI and T20 teams at various points. Now, we have moved ahead of him in the T20 World Cup. We had Matthew Wade, and one of the reasons is that Matthew Wade is a better batsman. And Wade, look, I certainly don't think that he's as bad a keeper as some people suggest. The criticism of Wade came primarily from Ian Healy. And Ian Healy wasn't as good a keeper as a lot of people suggest, but he was complimented by Shane Warne. So all of this comes from Shane Warne, who was very influential, being Australia's best bowler. And Warne was asked, who would you prefer to keep wicket to your bowling out of Healy or Gilchrist? And Warne said Healy. So statistically, Gilchrist was a better keeper. And I think all sensible, objective looks at it would say Gilchrist was the better keeper out of him and Healy. But because of that one comment by Shane Warne that he'd prefer Healy, Healy got elevated up a bit higher than he perhaps deserved to be. And that in turn damaged Wade's reputation. Wade hasn't really made that many mistakes behind the stumps. And in fact, when we were looking at replacing Wade due to a run of bad form with the bat, not with the gloves, and they looked at a number of options then, and that was, I think it was towards the end of 2017 or early 2018, and Alex Carey was one of the major contenders. But we went left field and went with Tim Paine. Now, Tim Paine wasn't even someone that we were really discussing. So I don't know how many people remember that discussion at the time, but it was really a choice of sticking with Wade or going with Alex Carey. They were the two main choices. There was also the possibility of going with Cameron Bancroft, who isn't a regular keeper, but he occasionally keeps wicket, and he'd had a good run of batting form, which eventually led to him coming into the team as a batsman. Surprised many people because the opening slot wasn't supposed to be up for grabs. But they put him in as an opener and then put Tim Paine in as a wicketkeeper, and the rest is history. Of course, in retrospect, it would have been a better option to have had Bancroft as the keeper, even though he wasn't that good a keeper. Then he would have had a more solid position, and there wouldn't have been all that anguish and anger about having such a player like him in opening the batting. Because at that time we had Matt Renshaw as the opening batsman. His position wasn't supposed to be in doubt, but there you go. He was considered to be quite solid as an opener. So we made two mistakes, in my opinion, back then when we went for Bancroft opening and Paine as the wicketkeeper. And I think that the whole ball tampering thing, now I don't think we can blame the selectors purely for that, but I think that we had the wrong players in there. And one alternative that we could have had as the wicketkeeper if we didn't want to go for Bancroft was, of course, Alex Carey. And I think if we'd kept Renshaw in as opener for that series then, and then had Alex Carey as the wicketkeeper, we would have still had Carey in as wicketkeeper now. And I think we've seen from Carey that he's a very clean player, a very solid player. And look, obviously if Renshaw did end up losing the form that he lost because of presumably shock at being knocked out of the team for no particular reason, or because Bancroft had, I think, 3 good innings. He wasn't really in form overall, but he had 3 good innings. So it wasn't like a long run of form, it was 3 good matches, or 3 good innings. It was quite shocking that we were that short-sighted. And I really think that was a major mistake. But had we not done that, had we kept with Renshaw, sure, we might have replaced Renshaw later on, but we would have been a lot more solid with the openers position, and we wouldn't have had the Payne experiment. And look, I know Payne did well as a keeper, and I know, he was the clean image that we needed at the time as captain. But we could have also gone with Cummins as captain then, and that's something that we could have had, or we could have gone with Nathan Lyon, who stayed in the team the whole time through that. So it was a mistake then, and I think we've got to be really careful not to make that mistake again. The mistake wasn't having Smith there, the mistake was having Bancroft. And in retrospect, I think also the mistake was having Payne, because then we were forced to make him as captain. He was the clean image, even though we knew that he had this sexting scandal behind him. And we didn't have much choice about that. I mean, who else are you going to have? Nathan Lyon, perhaps. But then he was embroiled in the whole thing as well. So it became a difficult situation. And I think when you do make these sort of selection blunders, can have far-reaching consequences. And look, I guess that perhaps Carey might not have done as well as Payne is keeping at that time, but I think that we wouldn't have known that, and we would have been very happy with that. Payne was about to retire from first-class cricket, we've got to add, for more cricket. And I think that would have been fine. It would have been disappointing for him, and he wouldn't have had these highs of being captain. But, for the team, and we've got to think of the team, it would have been better. So, and I honestly don't think we would have had the ball tampering situation and all the problems caused by that had we simply not had Bancroft in the team, and certainly not as opener, and had we kept Renshaw and put Carey in, which I'd advocated for at the time. So now we're looking if we can look at fixing that mistake, I think that putting Carey in the team would be a good idea now. And I think he's completely clean. He's very solid, he's very consistent, he's very predictable. Now I guess the issue is he's not the most amazing batsman. I think he's solid, wicketkeeper level, and he's a proper wicketkeeper. So he's the one that I'd pick. Now would there be anyone else? Now the other person in the squad is Josh Inglis. He keeps wicket as well. He's not really a proper wicketkeeper, but he is a bit of a batsman who does keep wicket. And there isn't an argument to put a player like that in. I mean, that's arguably what Tim Payne was. So he'd be having a bit of a like-for-like replacement. Tim Payne was never a proper wicketkeeper, although admittedly he did keep wicket a lot better after his return to the Test team, because he was in the Test team around 2010 as well. I'm against that sort of angle. And I don't think Josh Inglis has done enough to sort of get himself there. Perhaps in time, if Carey doesn't work out, we could consider him. There's another one, Josh Felipe, who's been making a lot of runs, and he's someone to consider, but he's not actually in the squad, so I don't think that's an option. But certainly I think it's really, really important to put Carey in there. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, why not have Payne in there? Well, one thing is he's recovering from a neck injury, so I think that's dangerous. But another thing is that he's actually said, or at least hinted, that he's planning on retiring after this Ashes anyway, and might even do it halfway through the Ashes. And I remember when Steve Waugh made that decision halfway through, I think it was an Ashes series then, and it disrupted everything. Of course, Steve Waugh was a much more influential player than Tim Payne, but you know, that was bad to announce the retirement halfway through the series. If you're going to announce the retirement, announce it now and go out now. I think it would cause too many problems to have Payne in the side. And it's easier to just say, all right, it's time for you, Carey. We'll give you a shot. You've got the 5 tests. See how you go. And I think, you know, we can talk about regrets about bad decisions in the past. One of them being Bancroft, and I think in retrospect probably even Payne as well. Back in 2018, they shouldn't have been in the side, and I think making Payne captain was probably a mistake as well. But you know, that's happened, that's done. All we can do now is to move on. And I don't think Payne should be blamed for being in the side or for being made captain. He did his best, but we've got to move on. We've got to try to do the right thing now. Right thing to do now, make Carey the captain. Make Carey the wicket keeper and Cummins the captain. That's it for me. Bye bye.